Right. So, all right, everyone. We have Mr. Kolawole Oluwadare joining us now. He is the Deputy Director of SERAP. SERAP is a Nigerian group that have gone head-to-head with the Nigerian government, and it means economic rights and accountability projects. They fight government, they fight social issues, injustice in Nigeria like you've never seen. So, Mr. Kolawole, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Perfect, perfect. So just take us through fighting corruption in Nigeria. What is it like fighting corruption in Nigeria?
Fighting corruption in Nigeria should be seen through within the context of where we have been as a country, where we are presently, and when we aim to be. And so we started this latest round of democracy in 1999.
Okay.
And we've had a lot of good experiences and some bad experiences. But basically, the socioeconomic rights that should be, and it is the right of all Nigerians, have not really borne fruit, either in the daily lives of Nigerians or even as a matter of their economic outlook.
Okay.
And we've discovered that corruption is one of the major hindrances to the full realization of socioeconomic rights. Okay. And actually, transparency and accountability is a requirement for good governance and the solution to what corruption has been in this country. And we would understand that it is not for a lack of resources as it were that has made Nigerians not to enjoy the full benefit of socioeconomic rights. And it's not also a result of the failure of the laws that we have. We do have some good laws. Yeah, laws are not perfect. But what we've seen lacking is a political will to implement those laws, coupled with corruption. It has really affected the Nigerian state and principally the citizens of this country. And it is within that context that SERAP was started in 2004 to ensure that with advocacy for socioeconomic rights, to ensure that all Nigerians enjoy the benefit of socioeconomic rights. And again, we understand that these rights are in our laws, so they are clearly stated in the 1999 Constitution, and so they are human rights that should be promoted and
Hello. Well, we're having some network challenges. He told me he will be traveling today, so perhaps the network is still giving us a little problem. He will be joining us once this is connected. You were talking to Mr. Oluwadare, the Deputy Chairman or President of the SERAP Group, a very daring Nigerian group that has been doing everything to fight corruption in the country. So he was just telling us about what it's like in Nigeria to fight corruption. We'll try to bring him back now. I understand it's going to be a bit difficult to that effect. So you were telling us about what it's like in Nigeria to fight corruption.
Yes. The tools of our advocacy at SERAP includes citizen education, research, and public interest education, which is one of the tools we use quite well to ensure that government understands the needs of the people, and they make sure that it's very paramount in the implementations of government policy and in the act of governments as part of our democratic practice itself. Okay. And we've had some highs and lows in this regard, but ultimately, the hope is to ensure that the Nigerian people understand that the advocacy for good governance, of course, is the primary duty of every citizen, because ultimately the benefits of good governance will accrue to every citizen. And as we've seen over the years, the demerits of bad governance also affects everyone in that regard. We've had some wins with that. We could call some losses, as it were. Okay. And the ultimate aim that I mentioned is to ensure that citizens of this country, whether in the country or out of the country, are able to take up the advocacy initiatives for good governance that would ensure that Nigerians get the utmost benefit of democracy. And it is also within the context of a much more narrowing civic space, the low tolerance of those in government, their public officers, for critical views or views that are perceived not to be be relatively attractive to those in power. And that is why we've seen some clamp on media, and even social media, and some advocacy organizations like SERAP.
Okay.
Our public interest litigation advocacy have yielded some benefits. We've had judgments in our favor.
Okay.
Against the government.
Perfect.
Which are yet to be implemented, by the way, which is again another sad point in the advocacy for good government. So for instance, we had a judgment at the Federal Court in 2019. Honorable Justice Okundeyi, if I recall correctly, mandated the Attorney General of the Federation to challenge the legality of state pension laws and to ensure that such funds that are unlawfully paid are returned to the coffers of government. And a bit of context there. And so the Nigerian Constitution allows the state government to make laws that would pay some sort of pension to former governors and deputy governors. So the state, the governors, that is the House of Assembly, are taking this opportunity to make various laws. And more than 22 states out of 36 have made those laws so far. Okay. That is huge amount of money to governors and former deputy governors, which is really, it does no start to reason. It makes no sense in morality or law. We come to court to challenge that, and the court will not favor. But again, that is yet to be enforced. And you would understand, in barely 2 weeks now, when some of the governors and deputy governors are leaving office, they would continue to collect those huge amounts of money. And these are states that are indebted even to the pensioners of the state. These are states that are barely afloat, as it were. And then this practice, this rather unlawful practice continues. And we also got judgment against the unlawful shutdown of Twitter by the government 2 years ago. And the court ruled in our favor, that is the ECOWAS court, declaring that the ban of Twitter by the federal government was unlawful. And that the Nigerians should make commitments not to take such steps in the future. Unfortunately, some of these judgments are yet to be enforced, but it is considered a win for the Nigerian people as well, and not only for SERAP, as an outcome of public interest litigation.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That is what we're going to come to, because I know that Nigeria is a very difficult place to fight corruption in a particular country where, like I said before, it's almost a way of living. So imagine one person coming out trying to make a change. I know there are going to be challenges. So the question I'm going to ask is that what are the direct challenges from the government officials? Because the government official did assure Nigerians that they were there to fight corruption. That is one of the ways this government came into power. Their campaign promise, one of them was to fight corruption. So what are the challenges you are facing from government officials in doing your job?
It would basically boil down to lack of political will, right from the highest office in the land, that is the president and the presidency as a whole, and the president himself, and down to the councillors and the local government. There is a lack of political will on the part of government to enforce laws, and of course these laws are part of the essence of the rule of law. The key tenet of democracy. And so we have laws that are really obeyed. A good point is the Freedom of Information Act, which allows all Nigerians to have access to every kind of public information you can think of. And this is also an aspect of the freedom of expression, which is a constitutionally guaranteed right in Section 39 of the Nigerian Constitution. And so we have a bulk of litigation, public interest lawsuits against the government, which are basically lawsuits to enforce the rights of citizens to have access to information. A very good example would be the Abacha loot.
Yes.
Right from 2015, when this government came into power, there has been 2 tranches of Abacha loot, which Abacha loot being the name for some of the repatriated funds that the late director in Nigeria had stashed abroad. And we asked a series of questions from the government of how much it come in and how those funds have been spent. The next government who's been forthcoming with this information, and we had come to court, and these matters are still pending in court. And so this shows the lack of political will on the part of public officers to obey laws that would not only make them transparent and accountable to people, but will also empower the people to know how government is run and the benefits of good governance, as it were. So, but within that context of under that political will, we can talk about a lack of transparency and accountability on the part of government, right from the budgeting process, budget making process, to the expenditure of government. There is a lot of opacity in governance, which allows a lot of corruption to take place. Yes, it can be argued that lack of transparency and accountability may not be corruption itself, but it is also true that the lack of transparency and accountability is a great facilitator of corruption, and that is what we have seen. And that is also coupled with a low tolerance of public officers for any kind of criticism, or whatever they perceive as any politically motivated criticism, which in most cases are not. For instance, what we do at SERAP is not politically affiliated. We do not promote any ethnicity or religion. We are basically an human rights group advocating for good governance. And that has also made the civic space not really that free for people to talk. There have been instances where public officers have used law enforcement agencies against those who are spoken out on social media, which again is an indication of the low tolerance of public officers. And it also affects the kind of work we do, because the basic tenet of our work is that while SERAP initiates this advocacy initiative, the aim is for Nigerians to be able to take it up and win the fight against corruption and advocacy for good government as it were. So if I also capture the major challenges against what we do at SERAP, it will be a lack of political will on the part of public officers, and within that context we have a stifled civic space, a lack of transparency and accountability.
Oh, right. Well, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kolawole, for that elaborate analysis of your challenges. I'm just going to hit the nail a little here. Have you ever, because I know in Nigeria, even people post something on social media, they get arrested and they are threatened to withdraw statements and all that. Have you ever, as a group or as an individual, be threatened by a Nigerian government to do something or rescind your suit against them?
No, as an organization, we have not received any kind of direct threat in that regard, but we've had calls to take off cases in court, and as part of our legal advocacy for Nigerians who have suffered from that kind of treatment. We were in the ECOWAS court 2 years ago on behalf of, for instance, Mr. Agbajalingo, who was unlawfully arrested and charged under the Terrorism Act simply for publishing some page in his online newspaper that public officers found offensive. And we went to the ECOWAS court, and the ECOWAS court ruled in his favor and awarded him the compensation of 10 million, which is yet to be paid. So we do not have such direct experiences, but we had cause to defend Nigerians who have suffered in that regard. But we do get what you call online bullying or trolling from what people that we've seen as agents of government or political parties who perceive our work to be political motivated. Of course, their perceptions are wrong.
Okay. Just I see you've mentioned areas where the government, the court ruled in your favor and the government completely disregard that rule. So what do you do in such a situation where you drag the government to court to correct an illness and the government just disregard that ruling? What do you do in that regard?
Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it from, we can only continue to engage in advocacies to ensure that government obeys the judgment of courts. Any other process will be unlawful, which is why what the government is doing is not only an attack on democracy, it's an attack on the citizens themselves, because the sovereignty and the powers of democracy are derived from the people themselves, which is why Section 6 of the Constitution, for instance, is very clear that the courts will be the final arbiter of duties and obligations of Nigerians, between and among Nigerians, and even between the Nigerians and the government. So we continue not to press, and that means that we also take up fresh cases against the government where areas that we've seen infractions of the law. We will persist and we will persist. For instance, recently we've taken steps to file contempt proceedings against the Attorney General of the Federation for failure to obey some of the judgments that are pending in court. Those are the legal mechanisms that we can take.
Yeah,
unfortunately, we cannot take any unlawful step or things that are not considered extrajudicial, which is why we continue to persist in this kind of advocacy, including having conversations like this. to compel the government to act in the public interest.
Yeah, thank you. But a situation like this, when you try to advise a Nigerian to go through a legal process or legal ways of dealing with a situation, they tend not to follow it because the system is not in their favor. Now, you as a group, you have, you understand the system, you know the law. Many Nigerians don't. When they want to, because they end up resorting to violence, street jungle justice, because they don't believe in the legal system. So how don't you think that the Nigerian government, disregarding court rulings, not respecting the rule of law, don't you think this is actually changing the situation for Nigerians, making them to be no law abiders, making them to be violent or taking the law into their own hands?
Of course. That forms the bulk of our advocacy also. I've mentioned that one of the tools that we use is public enlightenment and public education. So we're doing a lot of advocacy initiatives to educate or call it reorientate Nigerians as to what their rights and obligations are. Okay. It is not enough for them to know what their rights are. It is also important for them to know their obligations. And the obligations is to the state, not to individuals, not to political parties, ethnicity or religion, to understand that the government is presently the highest breaker of laws, so to speak, but these citizens cannot afford to do like that because if anyone toes that line, what we will have is anarchy, which will not be in the interest of everyone. So we continue to teach and educate citizens not to give up. And the aim is to build this momentum and to have that much needed critical mass that would bring about a change ultimately. Things cannot continue to go this way. But we can only advocate for peaceful and lawful means of advocacy to bring about the change. And I would tell you that it's not an easy task, given the weight that Nigerians bear, and I've been bearing for a while, but we continue in that advocacy to tell people that the best way to challenge wrong is to go through the legal process, however daunting or frustrating that might be. And we are very hopeful that critical mass can be achieved and will ultimately be achieved. And I do agree with you that the actions of the government does not encourage the obedience to the rule of law by the citizens. It is quite sad and unfortunate. But we cannot allow that to dictate a wrong course of action for Nigerians. We will continue to obey the law. We'll continue to teach people to obey the law. We'll continue to have them obey the rule of law, go through the judicial process as long as it takes.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the reason why I asked that last question is because whenever the Standard Gazette shares your statement, because we do receive your statement, when you release a statement, we do receive a copy of it. So whenever we share your content to the readers, all we get is, the SERAP again, please just put in the matter, it's like they are fighting shadow. And this is what many of the readers are responding. This is what they are saying, that it's just a waste of time. They can only fight it because the people they are fighting, they are not willing to make the change. So if Nigerians have this perception that it doesn't work if you go through the legal system, I think it's only a matter of time before the explosive, which the government or the lack of legal system in the country is always only going to explode as a matter of time. Don't you think that? Because it's related to my last question. I'm only worried of the implication of the neglect of the rule of law.
Of course, the implications are clear. We've seen an example of that in history, including Nigeria's history as well. And so it is something that is possible, but it is something that we are hopeful that we can avoid. This is why our whole strategy is to continue to educate Nigerians and set a good example of why Nigerians are not to give up. As a new advocate, we've been doing this for years, and we understand what that means, even for a lawyer to file a case in court, a public interest case in court. Sometimes there are wins, sometimes there are losses. Sometimes there are misconceptions about the truth, or sometimes it takes a legal, financial, psychological pull on the human rights activities. But we must understand, and we need to make Nigerians understand. I think we are doing quite well for them to understand. Nigerians cannot afford to be frustrated. We cannot afford to be cynical, pessimistic of why post-application initiatives do work. They need to work, and that is why people need to understand. That hope advocacy and what lawful process can bring. Those advocacy initiatives to work. If people think it doesn't work, why did the government shut down Twitter years ago? Because, of course, people can use social media as a tool to speak their minds. And really, the government listens. When the government listens, it means they hear. It doesn't necessarily mean that they obey the will of the people, but they hear. So Nigerians need to persist in this lawfulness, and we need to resonate that message clearly to Nigerians that this lawfulness of advocacy is the best strategy to go. We cannot afford to give up. And for those who think that what we do may not bear much fruit, I think they are wrong. They do not understand how these things work, which is why we also do that as part of our public enlightenment strategies. The people need to understand. We need to keep this up. We need to continue. We need to persist. And ultimately, I am very certain that critical mass will come. That will bring about the much desired true lawfulness, of course, a true lawful constitutional.
All right, thank you. My next question is, as at January 2022, you granted an interview to Punch newspaper, January 2022. At that time, you accounted that 40 suits have been filed against the Nigerian government, and of which 22 was just in 2021. And so now we are in 2023. So how many suits in total do you think you filed against the Nigerian government? How many have you won?
In total, I don't know the exact figures, and I don't want to give the wrong figures, but from the last engagement with our lawyers, we have almost 50 lawsuits pending in court. You understand the way public interest lawsuits, the way lawsuits are generally court. The pace is quite slow, again, which is some of the institutional challenges we have in the various arms of government, including judiciary. Some cases are won, some are lost based on the various adjournments, but we have about 50 pending as I speak in courts, which are basically they are all public interest cases. They are requests for information, access to information cases, cases asking the government to take necessary steps. For instance, to probe some of the reports of the Auditor General of the Federation. So most of those cases are going through the adjudicative processes, which is quite slow, I must admit. So that has disturbed the pace of those cases. But we do have judgments. We have more than about 11 judgments against the government, some of which is yet to be enforced as I speak. And that itself, the institutional challenges that we have, delays the pace of those cases. And then implementation is another matter entirely, which is subject to the political will of the government. But those cases are going through the judicial process, and we are quite hopeful that ultimately the courts will side with the Nigerian people and decide those cases in the public interest. Meanwhile, the jurisprudence of human rights is being built, and that takes time. History will show that people stood up to the government to challenge the illegalities perpetrated by the government, and that is also a rigid jurisprudence of our laws to ensure that when that time comes, people will not be able to point to the steps that they are taking to defend this democracy. So we are quite hopeful, even though with the volume of cases in court, ultimately, even with the pace that is not so favorable, that will get most of those cases decided in favor of Nigerian citizens.
All right. Well, thank you. I was looking through the data for Nigeria, the corruption. I realized that in 2015, Nigeria was on the global index corruption rank was 196. Today, we are at 150. We've dropped so much, and despite this effort by a group like yours to try to change the way in Nigeria, to try to encourage corruption. So my question here is, where do you think Nigeria is going? Because at the moment, Ghana, a country like Ghana, has it ranks 77. We rank 150. Where do you think Nigeria is going? Is it getting better?
If that indices, when we talk of Nigeria getting better or not, we need to define what the parameters are. Now, within the context of the rating of Nigerian internationally reviewed by Transparency International and other such indexes, of course, they have their own indicators of how to determine the base of corruption. And we do entirely agree with such ratings. That is majorly a perception-based survey that shows what the people think of government. And that is quite true. It reflects what the people think of the Nigerian government, which is why we need to sustain the hope in the legal mechanisms to make Nigerians continue to demand and fight for their rights. It's very important. Giving up is not an option. Giving up will not, Mr. Neil will no good. Not even those perpetrators of the injustices are public officers, either elected or appointed. So if you ask me where is Nigeria going, we are currently, the public officers are doing their best to ensure that Nigeria continues down this path of corruption and lack of transparency and accountability, which is why it's a two-pronged advocacy. One is directed at public officers to constantly ensure that they do what is right and call them out for some of for the actions that they are taking against the Nigerian people. And the second part of the advocacy is to encourage Nigerians also and not to give up, not to become cynical with the happenings and the events that they've seen, to continue to persist to demand for their rights, particularly. Most importantly, the demand for those rights and those advocacy initiatives must be done without the negative prism of tribe, ethnicity, and religion, or call it politics, which has been a dividing factor that has not allowed Nigerians to speak with one voice over the years. And so that is also a very important part of advocacy, that the demand for good governance must be done without those those flimsy or primitive outlooks of tribe, religion, and politics. No, we must continue them. So there is an outlook that is a positive outlook for the people, not on the part of the government, for the people, to continue to take these steps, to continue to challenge government within lawful means. And again, we are very hopeful that these will yield positive results.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Oluwadare. Sorry, I still try to pronounce your name very well, Mr. Kolawole Oluwadare. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. I have one last question for you. What is your general advice for Nigerians? I know you've tried to hint it during one of your response just now. What is your general advice for Nigerians who are very frustrated with the legal system, who believe that they don't have a representative? What is your advice to them?
Thank you very much. I think it's very important that Nigerians understand what good governance is and the benefit of good governance. When we understand what that really means, it will help us stifle that primitive and flimsy outlooks of religion, tribe, ethnicity, and politics, which has driven the advocacy of the citizens for a long time. So the advocacy is well-intentioned, but mostly because of these factors, they tend to limit the scope of those things. So we need to understand that the tribe of the president, the religion they belong to, or his political affiliations have little or nothing, have little to do with good governance. It doesn't. And those like we've seen with natural events like COVID-19, when the ravages of COVID-19 came to Nigeria, it did not spare anyone as to whether class, social class, religion, or tribe, or even their political affiliations. The effect was felt among everybody, even though disproportionate among the poor and the downtrodden. So people need to understand what good governance is, what human rights is within the context of rule of law and good governance, that it is something that cannot be negotiated, irrespective of who it affects, who is the president, who is appointed, who is the governor, whether it's a tribe or religion. I believe that when Nigerians understand that fully, the demand for good governance will be done much more objectively and much more powerfully. So along with my call for Nigerians to persevere and to persist in using legal means to hold government to account, is that also very equally important message that the call for good governance, human rights, the rule of law, must be done without those rather those what are seen as really the outlooks of religion and tribe and politics, which are so far divided the Nigerian people to our utmost disadvantage.
All right, Mr. Kolawole Oluwadare, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. I understand you are on transit. I know you try to join us today by all means, which is very, very important to us. Thank you very much for joining us. We will hope you can join us next time when we have this kind of robust questions to ask you for Nigerians, yeah?
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Perfect. Well, thank you. All right. Yeah, for everyone joining us, that is just Mr. Kolawole Oluwadare. That is the Deputy Director of the SERAP, a group that is fighting Nigeria corruption tooth and nail without taking side. This group, they've been operating since 2004, and they have fought several governments, fought local government, fought state government. Everyone that they believe that is not doing the right thing, they go out of their way to make sure the Nigerian people finds justice. And the group deputy director is also appealing to Nigeria not to take law into their own hands and to continue to follow the system, to follow the law, despite the setbacks they've had. I think that is the best message we can get for Nigerians today. And it's not easy to be in a country where the government, those who are the self-acclaimed leaders, are not doing the right thing. But if we want to change Nigeria for the best, we all need to step up, do our bit in fighting corruption. It is not for SERAP only to do. It's not for Mr. Buhari only to do. It's for everyone to do, starting from your own office. If someone comes to your office, police, the court, the judge, everyone, if someone comes to your office, do you ask them to give you something in order to assist them? That is not the Nigerian government, that is you as an individual. Are you always looking for a shortcut in order to get something done? There are legal processes, you're not following that. Everyone has a role to play in this system, things to make Nigeria a better country for everyone to live in. I understand we are all frustrated. Over the years, we've been shortchanged, but it's not happening. That's because we are all not committed into the system. We are not committed. Many of us are fighting corruption in the face of the media. Some of them just have opportunity. They have a sense of oratory. They express themselves very well. They talk about fighting corruption, but in the real sense, these people don't really believe in what they are saying. We have to learn to practice what we preach. We have to learn to talk about the real deal of what is going on in Nigeria so that the future of our children can be secured. We all cannot run away from Nigeria. It is not possible. Some of us are going to stay there. We will have to survive. But we can start changing it one person at a time. So thank you today. This is our discussion today. Corruption, the challenges are made important. So that is our topic today. You've heard everything from the Deputy Director, and we hope to have him join us again. So I want to say thank you to SERAP Group for taking the time to join us. I will say have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your day. And thank you and have a good evening.